much. Okay, now maybe we can move on to Anna Mariel. Can you introduce yourself, Anna?
Thank you so much. And thank you for having us all here today. Dina, you are great. My name is Ana Mariel Campuzano, and I am the USA delegate for the track of diversity and inclusion for Y20 Indonesia 2022. I'm very excited to be here and to be talking to you all. I am currently a student, master's student in global affairs and practicing peace building and conflict resolution. And I have a background in international relations and also
Anna,
peace
are you?
organizations.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
it's just
you.
like a shaking a little bit, but yeah, you're back here again. Thank you, Anna. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
I hope that can bring a lot of also knowledge, especially in the perspective of international relation for the diversity and inclusion today. And then for our third speaker, there is Disti Winata. Hi, Mbak Disti. Can you introduce yourself and turn on your camera? Is Disti still here? I hope she's still here. Or she's gone. Okay. I mean, because the time is ticking, the clock is ticking. So I think, okay, good. She's back again. Hi, Mbak Disti. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me well?
Yes, perfect.
All
Can
right.
you turn on your...
Let's see. I'm in the middle of a train ride, but fingers crossed. I've been having issues with my internet, but I'm glad that I can log in now. So perfect.
There you go. There you go.
All right, let's go for a round of introductions. My name is Disti. Thanks again to the RSF and Dina for having us here at a very exciting time. Of course, it's Saturday night. What else can you do aside from listening to this show? So my name is Disti, and I'm a director for diversity and inclusion at Y20 Indonesia 2022. And yes, I look forward to hopefully a little bit more about the process, negotiations, and of course, the most exciting part, the implementation of our communique, and learning more from the attendees on what you would like to know about diversity and inclusion priority area at the Y20 Indonesia this year. And especially given that the Leader Summit is just a few days away, I think this couldn't come at a more exciting time. Look forward to the exciting discussion ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Meldisti. This is such a, you put a lot of effort to come to here and then discuss with us in the middle of the train journey. But anyway, it's going to be interesting because as you can see, like we are mobile as a young people, nomaden and everything. So it's not like, like the space and also the time is just like not limited. Anyway, we're going to discuss a lot about diversity and inclusion. It's very interesting thing. I mean, before that, I also saw talking about this when I was studying my master degree in children in development studies. So like talking about diversity and inclusion is something very important, and it's like in the core of the development nowadays. You cannot talk about like implementation of the development without talking about diversity and inclusion, right? But before that, I want to know more, maybe also our attendees now like questioning, what is the difference between G20, what is Y20, why there are a lot of 20 here and a lot of alphabetical. So I want to ask the first question to Abdullah Shukri, maybe, if you can, to answer this, like sharing what is actually Y20, why is it important for the youth, especially maybe youth in Indonesia, to know about this initiative?
Yeah, thank you. So we know that G20 has a lot of engagement groups based on their area. For example, Business 20, Parliament 20, Women 20, and Youth 20 is the engagement group for the young leaders from the member of G20 countries. And for one country, we have 4 representatives because we have 4 focus area that we discuss until at the end of the day we create a policy recommendation, or we call it Communiqué Y20. So we have 4 priorities area. One is youth employment. Second one is digital transformation. The third one is sustainable and livable planet. And last but not least, the area that we discuss now is diversity and inclusion. So we gather in Bandung and Jakarta, the main summit. But before we, in Indonesia, as the organizer from Ministry of Youth and Sport, they appoint Y20, Indonesian Youth Development, Indonesian Youth Diplomacy. So we create 4 pre-summits to, how do you say, to do a lot of things like FGD, discussion with local community, and we create in 4 islands. The first one in Palembang in Sumatra, the second one in the Nusa Tenggara Barat in Lombok, the third one in Balikpapan, Kalimantan Timur, the last one in Papua Barat. So we try to get all perspective from you Indonesian youth. And also we create a white paper, maybe after me, Disti can complete my, from my information maybe about the, what is white paper and something like that. So in the Mind Summit, we had a dialogue, we had a lot of discussions with all delegates from all countries that finally we create a policy recommendation called the Y20 Communiqué that we will give it to all stakeholders and we will propose it to the G20 Summit in Bali next week, yeah. So, and also after that, now we are in the path of advocacy activity and dissemination. Like we create a lot of seminar, we create a lot of discussion, and we meet a lot of stakeholders to discuss about the implementation of the Communiqué Y20, because it's nonsense if we already took a lot of time, energy, but then we cannot doing the real ones. I mean, the real actions, how to do a lot of solution for tackle all problems, especially in diversity and inclusion track. That's from my perspective. Maybe Disti can add my comments.
Indeed. But before that, also, like, I'm kind of curious. So maybe also Disti can add about this. Like, so what's so special about Y20? What makes it special? What's so different with other youth-led organization, about youth other groups? You know, like we have tons of youth-led organization in Indonesia. We talk a lot about SDGs as well. We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion. However, I want to also know, like, what makes it different? What makes it so special? Do you have like anything that can also maybe track this? Of course, you are the tracking chair in here, and then like how to ensure the monitoring and evaluation process, and then maybe answer that first. It's an interesting part. Disti, are you still with us?
Sorry, what makes Y20 so special? So, can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So what makes Y20 quite different from any other forum or model simulations, for example, MUN, is that Y20 is actually the official site engagement for youth in the G20. And as you know, G20 has a lot of influence. We represent 80% of the world's population, and then GDP, the world's GDP, and it's pretty much like a 20 most powerful nations in the world. So we're very grateful that Indonesia is the only ASEAN member. So we carry a lot of responsibilities, not just the Indonesian national, but regional Asia. And what makes it special is that our policy recommendations do not just end on a piece of paper. This is basically what we submit to our leaders, our heads of states, as a representation of what young people from the G20 member nations actually want to share. Like, these are biggest problems that face our generation, and this is what we want to propose. In the hands of power, and they have a lot of privileges, and this is our And I think Indonesia comes at an exciting time. For example, we are the presidency of the G20 this year and also the chairmanship of ASEAN next year. So I think Indonesia is at the strategic time and position. And I think this is our opportunity to also discuss diversity and inclusion, because historically, Y20 actually never really covered diversity and inclusion, because it's always been economic focus, so a little bit about the environment, but not so much, you know, we're talking, looking of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's far reaching than just who we are, by the cover, but also like it affects our education, it affects inequalities in our societies. So I think if you ask me why diversity and inclusion this year, my answer is why not? Because it's so relevant, it's so pressing. And I'm very excited to introduce that at Y20 this year. And the two topic areas that we cover was inclusive education and also youth in the creative economy. And we as young people, we're the creative generation. And I think that's an exciting way for us to contribute to the global economy through creative economy. And whereas for education, I think a lot of evidence has shown that education actually helps young people to escape from poverty, and it also helps to close inequalities this year. So those are the two topics to start.
Okay. Thank you so much, Disti. I mean, yeah, I would say like I'm agree with like, well, the basic foundation is supposed to be like, hello? Disti? Can you hear us? I hope you're still there. Or maybe some
Hi,
some
can you
internet.
hear me? I just passed the tunnel, so I think that's why. So where was I? I'm so sorry.
Can
I
we
think
blame the
this-
tunnel? No, okay,
Yeah, blame
continue,
the tunnel.
continue.
Yeah, where was I? I was talking about the white paper. So the white paper was based on research by of 5,700 young people between the age of 18 to 30 in G20 member countries, as well as in the industry experts. So I had a chance to interview someone from the UN, someone who are the artists, and then someone who worked in the ministries of education and also the creative economy. So feel free to take a look. But I think the most relevant now and the most updated one are the communique. So it's available on our website at y20-indonesia.org. And I think Anna Mariel and Abe could talk more about the subtopics within the communique, because it has evolved from 2 to actually 5 sub topic areas, and also how we try to really live up the diversity and inclusion aspect, where we talk a little bit about persons with disabilities, and we talked about intersectionality. So those are some of the most exciting, the most progressive elements of our communique. It's pretty much the most progressive and the most inclusive Y20 communique that I have ever seen. And believe it or not, I have been in Y20 since 11 years ago. So I've seen all the communique that we have produced so far, and I couldn't be more proud of the great work that has been done by our delegates this year. So I'll stop there. Otherwise, I could continue on and on the process.
Yes.
Move on with the next question.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It's very comprehensive answer, even if you are in the middle of the, like you are on the train and then passing by the tunnel and etc. Now, I want to move on to Anna. Since like it's very interesting, this day, and also Shukri already mentioning about the Y20 communique. Like this is the policy recommendation that has been done all together with a lot of youth that attended the Y20 itself. So my question would be like, maybe you can share and explain about the challenge and opportunities of youth implementation that you have been drafted in the communique itself. And another question, when I was still becoming like a youth representative, sometimes you have like this pressure from the high level panel of eminent person when you are drafting something like, hey, why you are talking about this while our own purpose is something like this? Do you have like that kind of, you know, pressure, or also like you are being like led by the global leaders or something, or this is pure coming from the young people because this is like your own voices and it's very inclusive itself?
Thank you so much, Dina. And if you could, because my connection sometimes tends to be unstable as well, but I just want to make sure that I'm being heard and that it's good. And thank you to my fellow colleagues. I think that we did a wonderful work in Y20 Indonesia, as Disti mentioned. So I'll start with the last question. I think that you're right. We all feel that pressure, mostly because I feel that, we're given this opportunity to represent so many different voices all over the world. And so we want to make sure that we cater to each person's need. So I think that that pressure also comes from both the bottom up and top down, because they also want, there's an expectation as well that we've already studied in our particular areas, that we worked in diversity and inclusion, that we understand international relations and how it affects people. And so there's a pressure from both sides when we feel like we have to represent so many different voices, but also be inclusive and think about all the other aspects. And this is, I think, what's unique about diversity and inclusion within the Y20. Because if you really take a look at it, all the other track areas are covered by diversity and inclusion as well. We need diversity and inclusion for a sustainable and livable planet, for youth employment, for digital transformation. All of those are components of diversity and inclusion, but it also deserves that one sole piece of track area, so that we work on the other measures that are not necessarily always mentioned in many different track areas. If you ask me, what are the challenges of, the Y20 Communiqué, I think that for one, we are all different and we come from very many different societies. So having youth represent, more than half of the world, it's a challenge within itself. And for all of that, it's complex, and it's everyone has their own knowledge. Everyone has a different education. So we aimed to create policies that were more adaptive, that everyone feel like they can relate to, that everyone feel like they could live in a world where there's going to be trade-offs, but there's also going to be a lot of benefit for the majority, for the common good, the greatest number of people. That's usually what we go for. I think one of the main challenges as well, that it was urgent that we transform the education system, which is why we put it as both in the white paper and in the communique, because there has been historically marginalized communities that usually don't have the same access to education. Therefore, they don't have the same opportunities to get themselves out of poverty and continue with a better life, following their dreams and those opportunities that some of us do have, as well as skill building. So we try to kind of communicate in our communique that there has to be an inclusive education, but also innovative and new education system in which people also develop skills that they can take with them to another country or another work, or something that serves them a purpose outside of the classroom. So it's not just a learning experience, but also a working in progress experience, so that people can also tap into this creative energy that they have. I think with another challenge was the COVID-19. Of course, we've all been hearing it for so long about COVID, but I think it's something that we continue have to mention, because there was lots of disruption in learning, and many people stay behind when it came to access to technology or any other learning processes. And we know for sure, I mean, even us as students that we have been all of our lives, if we miss one day of class, we miss a lot. So imagine missing 1 year, imagine missing, all these months. So I think that we also try to put an emphasis on the economic sector of the G20 to provide students with equal opportunities, in order for them to everyone have that access to both distance learning as well as learning in the classroom. Any availability that any other children have, then it should be available for everyone. And one last thing that I think it's very core to diversity and inclusion was culture. We try to make sure that we emphasize on culturalization practices, so that everyone has awareness of the cultural differences, whether it is in intersectionality, religion, many different forms of self-expression, in order to protect every person that is learning, every individual in the workforce, in the education force, And I can go on and on about education, because I think that it's the core, like primary importance of a lot of our communique, whether you look at it from and civic engagement perspective or leadership perspective. It also begins and stems from education. We all have to learn something in order to provide a learning experience from someone else. But I think that it also creates a lot of opportunities. When there's an area that hasn't been assessed, then that means that we can sort of promote it. We can say, okay, well, we need inclusive pedagogy, we need financial support, we need flexible legislation, and we need to focus on those marginalized communities that haven't been focused on previously, or give them that opportunity that everyone has, and make it all kind of like worthwhile when it comes to a financial support. There's no use in providing financial support if it's not going to be equal for everyone. We want, the talent comes from anywhere in the world, and we want to make sure that inclusivity is very collaborative in that part. I think that also we focused on creating lots of opportunity for the youth. And I think it's important because the youth are the future leaders of the world. So we are creating opportunities for ourselves, but also for the people who will be representing, and the people who will be representing the next generation. So I think that it's sort of a pathway. It's like a never-ending cycle of creating a better experience for us who are the youth today, but for those who will be the youth tomorrow. And we are kind of like the largest youth population ever in history. So I think that we're also representing the majority of the people in the world.
I would agree with that. It's totally, I mean, I 100% agree with that. You are talking about like inclusive education since beginning as well for children, because they are going to be like also the youth for tomorrow, or also the leader for today. And you also mentioned and trigger about most marginalized group. So like now I want like to move because it sounds like the communique itself, it's very comprehensive, I would say. And then like maybe also the team can also share the link for the attendee to also read the Y20 communique, because it's very interesting, and you can break down after this and then read which part, and then also comes to the conclusion that we're gonna like monitor and evaluate together. So now the question is gonna be like, how you guys gonna implement this? And then like, do you have like the inclusion and diversity strategy or roadmap? Because when you talk about inclusion and diversity, we cannot leave behind the most marginalized group, the indigenous people. I mean, leave alone the world. Talk about Indonesia, like tons of indigenous people here. We have like more than 600 islands in Indonesia. And then like, how about the child and youth? How about women itself? And how about people with disability? Like, we cannot leave behind those people. And then like, how you guys here can also ensure the meaningful participation of these actors? I mean, because you represent their voices, but I want to know like, what is the real strategy, like the real roadmap, and then how you can engage them and make sure their voices are heard, and then also meaningfully participate into the monitoring and evaluate together after all. Maybe Anna, if you want to answer first, and then we can move on to Disti and also Shukri.
Thank you. I think that for the implementation, we've done lots of work already. We've translated the communique into different languages as well, to make it available and accessible for people. We are doing lots of these sort of webinars and meetings, and a lot of amendments and changes and differences. I was looking up that recently some of our team decided to create a Y20 statement along with the Y7 in order to urge the G20 leaders to take a look at the G20, and that's on the G20, the Y20 Communiqué. And that's on the Y20 website if anyone wants to take a look at it. It's asking them to commit to effective multilateralism. And I think that we've done ourselves the work of creating the communique, but also talking to our peers, talking to the people around us. And I think that most of us are international to a certain extent. Many of us are from one country, live in another, travel for school, for work, for whichever the case may be. And given that sort of platform that we now have with the online and with, being mostly remote, we're also giving others the opportunity to learn about the communique. We're speaking about what we did and why is it important. So it really leaves it up on the hands of the G20 leaders. However, I think that the biggest part of the implementation is the communique itself, specifying that that the youth needs to be on the decision-making table. They need to be the ones who make these decisions for ourselves, for the majority of the people, and for the well-being of our community, but also creating a communique with points that have never been seen before. As Disti mentioned earlier, it has been the most effective, it has been the most progressive. So given that we have thought of so many different areas and worked so hard to narrow them down and to make them actually actionable, we didn't make the communique like we wish or we desire that this happens. No, it's giving you not only the idea, the policy recommendation, but giving you also the solution, how to implement it, the how to. A lot of times we want to make a change in the world, but we don't know how to begin. And that's what our communique does. Our communique tells us exactly how you can implement these areas and how you can really employ these policy recommendations and what will be the benefit of them for both the G20 countries and for the rest of the world.
Perfect. Like, yeah, I would looking forward for that. I mean, like, that's the best and then the most important part, like the implementation and engaging, and of course mainstreaming the ideas itself, because it will be nothing if people not knowing, like maybe we can also use the Instagram, our social media, to share about this, because this is very important. Now I want to move to Disti. I hope Disti is still here and then not passing by the tunnel again. Disti?
No
Yes.
tunnel in sight.
There you go. Okay,
I
cool.
think we're good.
So now
Yes.
I want to ask you, since
So
you
I
are the
could perhaps share some too.
yeah. Go ahead, Disti. Disti, don't you leave us hanging. Disti. Or should I move now to Shukri?
I think Disti is like a very impressive individual because she's doing both and she's got all the information, the knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, this is the real example of nomad and young people, but still like also meaningfully participate in the station. However,
for sure.
Okay, let's move to maybe Shukri first.
Yeah.
Okay, Shukri, like this is the highlight to you now because you are the Indonesian youth. I want to know like what. Oh, now they're still leaving us. Okay, I want to know your answer about that regarding like the implementation itself. Also how to ensure that, because some of the attendees questioning about like how you can make sure that the indigenous people and then also people with disability know about this, and how can you ensure in the middle of the COVID era like this, where some people don't have access for the internet or like inclusive education, but they can participate for this implementation.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The key is collaboration. So what the President Jokowi said, gotong royong. Yeah, so everyone have their own strength, but in the same time, they have their own limitness. For example, we know that youth have a big energy and a lot of time to do advocacy, but we couldn't be alone to implement or to make sure that what we write, what we discuss for Communiqué Y20 Indonesia will be implemented in Indonesia. So we need other stakeholders. For example, from the government side, from the private sector side, from the civil society side, or even from the university or from the school, or the last one maybe from the media. So the pentaheli concept is the concept for creating the collaboration to make sure that Y20 Communiqué can be implemented in all areas. But what we did, for example, in pre-summit, we not only attended by the participants from G20 country members, but also we have some participants, they are observer from the people, from indigenous people, from the people with disabilities. So in the process creating the Y20 Communiqué, we did a lot of discussion with them. And also in the advocacy, we also create a lot of discussions and also like just meet with them, talking with them, and to make sure that we can implement it together. I mean, yeah, back again, the key is collaboration. For example, in my organization, Indonesian Muslim Student Movement, we have been doing a lot of trainings or workshop or FGD because we have 250 branches in every city in Indonesia, and we have more than 1,000 commissariat in universities in Indonesia. And because I'm, as the general chairman, is part of Y20, we also doing a lot of discussion about the communique Y20 Indonesia, and also asking to disability or people with disability or a marginalized group to join our discussion, and also doing together the advocacy, even in the very grassroots level. I mean, in the villages, in the city level, or in the universities. So I do both of things. I mean, me as the delegate of Indonesia for Y20, and also I'm as the general chairman in my organization. So I think, yeah, again, the key is collaboration.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, yes, collaboration is the key, of course. And then like I would say that we need also to ensure that all actors from all different perspectives also there, so that we can make sure that their voices are heard and taken into account, right? And then,
Yeah.
but still, I want to know. I hope Disti now can answer us because like she's like the track like in the chair for the diversity itself. Like I want to know Disti, like how can this communicate also a little bit trigger and also just like kick like the government and then also the global leaders to make sure that yes, this is the voices of young people, the future leaders, like the leaders of today. I don't want to say like the future leaders, like this is the today's leaders, and then like they can just like learn from it, and then they want to open up to have a discussion more maybe for like the young people, and also like okay, let's implement it together. Are you there, Disti? I hope she's here. Okay, she's leaving us again. Anyway, but yeah, maybe in the meantime we are waiting for Disti, because like also she's part of like the Indonesian society, and then like we want to know also the implementation in Indonesia in itself, since like the participants also mostly from Indonesia, and this is very important for our country, you know, and this is part of the mainstreaming issue. Now maybe I can throw some like one or two questions from the participants. Maybe if you, Anna, and also Shukri would like to answer this. This is very important as well. Like there is one from the participant asking, what's your best method for youth to put pressures on the government for providing access on education? Because that's one of the important issues that you guys talking about in the communique itself. Inclusive education, it's very important. Who wants to answer first? I give the floor to both of you.
Maybe me in Indonesian context. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, I think the leaders in Indonesia already carried in the process, at least in the process of Y20 events. Like for example, in Solo, the post summit Suara Pemuda, the governor from the West Java governor, and also the Central Java governor, Pak Ganjar, Pak Ridwan Kamil, they came and they also appreciate our work. I mean, if the leaders cares enough, I think it's gonna be easy. Why it has to be taken into account. It's important to implement the inclusive education through the Y20 Indonesia Communiqué. But then in case in other areas in Indonesia, I know that it needs big political will from the political leader. Yeah, I think the youth should be having a specific occasion or time to discuss directly to the leader, the political leader, to the bupati, for example, to the governor, or to other stakeholders. Because yeah, if we have a lot of efforts, but there is no political will from the political leader in Indonesian context, I think it's gonna be a bit harder to implement the concept of inclusive education, because in fact we still have uh, a lot of problems facing the problems in inclusive education. For example, the infrastructure. Maybe we will not see it in big cities like Jakarta, Bandung, or Surabaya, or Yogyakarta. But if you just go to another island, Indonesia, for example, in the eastern part of Indonesia, you will see a lot of things that they are problem of the inclusive education. It's even it is basic need of education. Not talking about the inclusive education, it's so far away. But in the basic of education, we still have a lot of problems. So the main key, in my opinion, is the political will from the political leader. I mean, in city level or in province level, or maybe if it should be doing extreme action like demonstration. Why not? If it is emergency situation, maybe. Because
Okay, but
yeah,
yeah.
like my organization, for example, like my organization, if the political leader, we try to ask them for some time to discuss. If they don't want to give the time, I mean, why not? I mean, if it is in the emergency, we can do it. It's Indonesian
Yeah.
context. Maybe Anna can add from USA perspective.
True. Maybe Anna, you can add up to that first.
Yeah, thank you. I think you mentioned all the important points. Lack of political will, it's on top. And to whomever asked this question, you are like amazing, and you're thinking the way that you should be thinking as the youth is thinking. So I really do appreciate that, because it is a hard question to answer. And when we think about how we can have the best method, well, because we don't yet have equal access to education, we don't have a model. So there's no method to follow, because we don't have something to look at, like inclusive education in many different areas. There's no other world. All we have is this. So we have to be that example for our own selves. That's number one. I think that without going to the extremes, even though sometimes they are rightfully necessary, I think that we best have to put pressure as with the powers and the tools that we have. So right now we have social media. If there is no pressure on the government, then let's put the pressure on ourselves. If people are more educated, then they're going to create more camps and for others. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity, but there's lack also of willingness, because we have people, let's say in the United States context, we have people that have lots of money, that have a lot of political power, or that can shift political power up into their benefit because of the power that they have in other areas. And I'm talking about celebrities. I'm talking about people in the financial sector, people who have for history amounts a very concerning amount of wealth. And these are the people to pressure. Like, we think about the government all the time as if the government is going to solve our problems, but government shifts and government changes every 4 years, every 6 years, every 10 years. So we cannot always rely on the government, but we can rely on those people who have been generationally wealthy and generationally influencing society. So it's kind of like a decolonization of the curricula, but like also a de-influence from the people who have historically told us the way things should be, because it's for their benefits. Like, how about we turn to be the ones who tell the story? You know, we are the ones who need to start saying, well, no, I don't agree just because, you know, you've been sort of influencing the youth for so long. I don't think that this is the way that it should be. So another way that we can do it, another method, is to challenge what's already in place. You know, again, without going to the extremes, but thinking about the extremes, you know, we are seeing a lot in many different countries now, especially in the UK. We're seeing lots of strikes in the employment sector. So we're seeing lots of strike also in the education sector, teachers doing strikes and stuff like this. I think that we need to challenge what's already in place. We need to attack what's already not working, because if it's not working, it will, you know, eventually crumble. And once it crumbles, then we have the opportunity to create something new. But I think that it also puts a lot of pressure on individuals to create their own opportunities and to engage in their own zones and ways of learning.
True.
But great question nonetheless.
It is very great question. I mean, it's very hard also to, there is no 100% right questions, answer to it, because like everybody now also gonna, I think we need to also make sure that everybody that has their own channel, like their own opportunity as well, to use that, as in also like break it and then like just mainstream it, you know, because sometimes like the mainstreaming part is the part that is quite easy, but people don't really want to do that. It's like, yeah, I thought everybody already know about that, you know. Not everyone in the same shoes, like not everybody like has the same start and so on and so forth. That's why like make sure that we are using the same language. I mean, like the easy language to be understood, because like, for example, want to mainstream this, we need to also change it into some form, like for example the reels on Instagram, or like also some, you know, design graphics, so that people don't really need to read all those documents, maybe that for those people that want to read. And also like approaching the political leaders, like, yeah, we can do the strike, we can do also some demonstration, I guess. And then, but it's also
If I may,
we can see, yeah,
if I may add, I will say, when you talk about political leaders, well, like also like we need to think about like the fact that these political leaders are not going to live forever, and we are the political leaders as well. So
true.
give yourself also the chance to become a political leader. I mean, many people are like, I don't want to engage in politics, or I don't want to be in this position, or I don't like politics. Like, you know, run yourself, run your campaign, become a representative for your community, become a representative for your people. I think that this lack of desire to be in the political system, because we know it's already rotten in many areas, it's also making us not brave enough to sort of attack these things. So when you mention politics, yes, of course there's lack of political will, but there's also lack of desire of becoming part of the political system. And I think that if you like, changes take time. If you start changing, even if it's one person that makes a difference, you know, then there will be two, then there will be three, then there will be four. So as you start building a political system, I think you need to have the willingness as well to be part of it, to be part of representing your people. It may be hard and exhausting, but one by one, I'm sure, like, you know, it's possible, and change takes time for sure.
Yeah, I think it's because maybe like some stereotype, like I don't want to be part of the political thing because like it's exhausting. It's just like not really targeting to the right people and everything. But yeah, let's, I mean, make a change. Like I think also the way Shukri and the organization do, like creating like the chairman, also the bigger organization in every part of Indonesia, is also like a great example for that. Before answering another questions, I want to listen to the answer from Disti. Disti, are you still here? Can you hear us? Is the internet connection stable now there? Disti. I'm gonna start singing now. Disti.
Hello, is my internet connection unstable?
Disti?
Hi, Dina. Could you please repeat
The questions. Yes. Like, what was my question now? Okay, it was already like 2 questions before. Like, it was about since you are like the Indonesian Director of Diversity and Inclusion, like, talking about diversity and inclusion is talking about monitoring and evaluation and how to bridge the gap between the young people that has created the communique, but also connecting it with the leaders, for, like, I would say Indonesian leader here for the context. But then how you, as a part of this, also can make sure that this leader could be also listen to the voices of the young people that has been drafted into the communique, and then also, yeah, she's gone again. Anyway, it's okay. We're gonna wait for this.
Maybe you could type the question so that maybe when she gets
Yeah, I will do that. I hope that she's gonna come back. So, but like, okay,
I hope.
because it's very interesting, like, I want to listen to.
She was our chair, and she's very knowledgeable, and I think that it's important to get her perspective, whether we can get it today or not. I think that if she were to for all the attendees, maybe we can send something tight, because Disti has been working with Y20 for a long time. But also how it has been changing over time, and what can make it unique this time and make it successful. And also I think that it kind of creates a legacy for the next Y20, which will be in India. It creates that sort of space for that to happen. And I'm telling you, she was our chair, and she's very, very, very knowledgeable and very helpful when it came to this.
Yeah, I think also those attendees here also want to listen from her perspective. Anyway, before we're gonna wait for her, but like, I received a lot of interesting questions as well that maybe also you and Shukri can answer. Is Shukri here as well? Or like, if it's not, then yeah, you can answer for this. Like, but it's still related to the diversity and inclusion, Anna. So like, there is one question asking like, how can we make sure that this diversity and inclusion could really be translated into action and not only one-stop campaign? Because mostly now, like, this is the era of like, yes, I'm creating this is like a trend. After like a year or 6 months, like, it's gone. Like, the crowd is moving to another thing. So like, how to make sure that this is gonna be long lasting, and then not only one-stop event or one-stop campaign.
Thank you. Actually, I was answering that. I was typing the answer for that question because I want to make sure that at least yeah. So I want to make sure that at least one of all of our attendees' questions are one line answer. And again, this question is thinking about the youth, is thinking about the future, and it's also thinking about what can we do today that will translate to tomorrow. I think that one of the smallest things that we need to start to sort of understand is that we need to believe in the campaigns themselves. Because, campaigns in the past, as social movements, as maybe Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, became a reality eventually, whether it was 10 years later or whether it was 20 years later. So it needs to start with the belief. You need to believe in the campaign. You need to believe in the idea of it. Once you start believing in it, you start to talk about it, not only with your peers that understand it, but with your parents, your family, your community, your little cousin, or your small sibling. You start to translate the language into a reality. You start to make others see what you see. I think that that's the first step to action. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of us are going to wake up tomorrow and decide like, this is no longer a campaign, that diversity and inclusion is a reality, and we're going to make it happen and impose it upon people. Because we can't impose anything upon a particular community. We don't know how they will react. Not only do we not know how they will react, but we don't know how it's going to affect them, because people like the way that things are. They like to keep things, they like the status quo. So it's a very, very hard pill to swallow, to understand that change takes a lot of time. So I think that starting to believe in it, started to translate the idea into your communities, your peers, the people who are around you, is the first step to action. You know, that is how you change in diversity and inclusion, changing the minds of people. One of the dean of our university once told me that there's a lot of, you know, sociological perspectives that you can find in order to change behaviors of people, but it's hard to change their hearts. So if you don't begin by making what you want to be a reality, speaking about it, that it's becoming your narrative, then you can't change the understanding, you can't embed it into people's mind, and then there will be no action. So I think the best way to action is first believe in it, and believe in yourself, and believe that, you know, that's the way things should be because of the right reasons. You know, we're not wrong because we want the best. So that's already your win, you know?
Yeah. Like, I think we need to aim it, you know, like aim the issues itself, aim that like it happens in our own daily basis. And then like, just like, because sometimes we don't realize that, it's actually happening, but I don't realize about it. But then you're actually doing it. It's just like, need like one person to open or just like trigger and then to start the flame, you know? I think that's the best way to answer it. And also like, maybe like starting from now, I think also for all audiences here, because I think sometimes we have like this kind of like, we are afraid that this is not gonna be solved, this kind of issue, because this is very big issue, Anna, like diversity, inclusion. When you talk about that, like, no way, this is like the whole world. We talk about the whole world. I mean, live alone the whole world. Like in Indonesia itself, like some people also still like a little bit question and also pessimist, like we have a lot of languages, we have a lot of ethnicities, and how you can address this you know, the topic about diversity and inclusion. Because I think to ensure that this is fully meaningful, talking about diversity and inclusion, it will need like the whole process, the long process. And then like those pessimists or like, it's not pessimist, I would say, like they are really like kind of like afraid and insecure about it, whether it's gonna be happen or not, whether the global leaders or the youth leaders also gonna involve them again, because it has been happening like for a long time. And then maybe the progress is not really, you know what I mean, like there, not what they expect. So I think those things also happening, and then they're like questioning about it. So like, yeah, I guess so.
I want to say, you know, I tend to be like, most of the times I'm more like the philosophical kind of way of thinking, like an idealist, you know. And I think it makes for a lot of us, especially in this sort of space of diversity and inclusion, because since we don't have it as a reality, we tend to idealize how the world would look like if we really had true diversity and true inclusion. That's why, you know, sometimes I feel like I need Disti, because she's like the more kind of structure mind and structure thoughts. But even what you mentioned, pessimism, if you use it to the positive, if you use it for your benefits, I think it can also be part of making that change. I know that there's a book that talks about the art of pessimism, and it's that when you know that things are not going right and you have a confidence that it's not okay, and you're always like, you wake up every day and you tell yourself like, oh, nothing has changed, then it gives you that motivation to make that change, as small as it may be. I'm a master's student now, and I decided that all of my papers that I'm not saying that I'm only gonna focus on bad things, but I'm gonna talk about all the bad things. You know why? Because one day maybe those papers will translate into a journal article or whatever the case may be that I want to publish, but it will describe the problem. And one of my teachers always says, the idea is that when you describe the problem, someone thinks of the solution. Maybe I don't have all the answers, but someone else might, or half of them, So maybe it's not always wrong. And again, this is very philosophical and idealistic of me, but it's not always wrong to recognize your reality, recognize what's going on before you try to take a step. You need to analyze every aspect of it before we kind of change it, And I think that many of the questions are of our audience are already thinking about this. You know, they're talking about things that are reality, because they already recognize that as a problem, you know. So you know, it's kind of like we have to put our pants on and decide, you know, which day we're gonna decide, maybe I'm gonna write all my papers about all the possible solutions that are to all the world problems, or maybe all the problems about sustainability, for example. Then at least you're creating something, you know, you're creating something for common knowledge, for someone else to know.
Nice. I mean, we need sometimes like to think like in the philosophical way, because like it's also very it's gonna make us realize that not everything is gonna be like okay, and it's okay if it's not okay, you know what I mean? And start questioning everything and talking about like negative sides first before you realizing that there's gonna be like a silver lining at the end of the day, you know. So okay, because I think this is like almost the time, so I want to ask the last closing statement from you, Anna, before I close this whole session. I'm so sorry that this Diano Soshukri is no longer here, and then like actually we want to listen more and then like hear more like their own answers, and then like how can we actually collaborate together at the end of the day. However, I hope Regional Sustainable Future and Y20 can also tackle about this in the end, maybe share something in your own Instagram regarding this, and then like also answering all the questions that maybe has not been addressed by us. So yeah, maybe like the last statement from you, Anna, and then like your hope, maybe also like what do you want this communique and everything to be happen and to be achieved, and what do you expect at the end that young people can take role into accelerating it?
Thank you. I really miss my counterparts, because they bring a very unique and valuable perspective. I know that, you know, we've been working since March, kind of April together, all of us, in the pre-summits, in the off-record and on-record sessions, and really, I think that I've learned a lot from them, and I've changed my mind about a lot of things. I think that that's also part of an important part of diversity and inclusion, that sometimes you may be on the side that you think it's right, and then you realize that there are other descriptions to what you thought was a world problem, and you shift side, and that's okay. I've tweeted it many times, and I put it on my social media a lot, that it's okay to change your mind as long as you think you're doing the right thing. A lot of us sometimes are stuck to our ideas, and we're so adamant about changing our minds and changing our sports team, and change even though they lose every year, or changing, you know, those like things that make us, that are a part of us. But it's important to like, as technology advances, it's important to us, for us to also update our minds and understand that you know, maybe what you thought that was best 10 years ago is not what's best anymore. I think my closing statement has to do with what we all talked about during the Y20, which is South African proverb, Ubuntu, or South African word, that means I am nothing without you. I read it first time I came across it. It was from a book in which children were running towards a particular goal, and they're like, well, it was supposed to be whoever made it faster was supposed to get the gift or the reward, and they're like, no, we all want the reward, you know. So I think that that's very important to think about, that it's not about you, because you might live this lifetime without seeing the changes that you create. So there's also that phrase that always says like, oh, you reap what you sow, you know, but you might sow and not reap, because this life is one, you know. So I think that we need to think about the benefits and the reward that others will get behind that, the legacy that we will leave behind. That was a great kind of like thought that we had throughout the entire Y20, creating something that, you know, would be worthy to look at later on, and that would also be worthy to look at for the stakeholders. Like, we're not telling them anything that they don't already know, you know. These policy recommendations, the world of work, youth involvement in education, diversity, inclusion, every other sustainable and livable planet is the most hot topic right now. You know, it's what we talk about. So we're not engaging in something that's unrealistic. we're only giving them recommendations on how to make it better for the people who are young, because we are the leaders of today, and there's a generational continuance for the leaders, for leadership. So it's not just us today, but it's the people of tomorrow. And youth is very important, because we have evolved our thinking, as I said earlier. We have updated our thinking, we have changed our minds. So it's very important to give recognition to those people and inclusivity to those people that are willing to change their minds in order to make a change. Like we said, we want to change from a society of the caterpillar into a butterfly, and give ourselves that freedom. That's the true liberty in life. Thank you.
Beautiful.
And this is
beautiful. I hope this is here now.
I'm back. It says my connection is back to 4G, thankfully. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
The train that has been quite tricky, as you know.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, we are almost reaching the end of the session. Maybe we can hear at least one of your closing statement, Disti, on how your hope so that this youth communique, also like the youth employment itself and everything that you have been discussing to the draft to be taken into account and realized, and then how young people can take role in accelerating it, especially in Indonesian context, if you would like to add.
Wow. I hope I can answer this in a brief way, but it seems like it's quite important. I think just to close off, I'm not sure if this has been discussed, but one of the most impactful strategies to be inclusive is actually to give them a seat on the table. And I think we really tried our best in doing that. So if you see the communique, there are some recommendations where we actually invited observers representing indigenous communities, persons with disabilities, refugees. And I think if we don't hear them firsthand, then who are we making recommendations for? Because they are the ones who are affected, and we can't really tell, we can't really share what we observe if we don't hear from their experience. Was worthwhile that we actually had these young people representing these margins. And I hope that this could be something that we continue to do in terms of Y20 summits in the near future, as well as other G20 meetings and other important meetings from now on. And in terms of accessibility, provided sign languages, and we encourage people who are in these communities to tune in, because at the end of the day, G20 sometimes the problem with G20 is the accountability. Like the presidencies change every year, and sometimes you have to start from scratch. And I hope there is that effort of knowledge transfer. So whatever that the delegates this year have discussed could continue. Like we could keep continuing the conversation. We keep pressing our leaders and also the stakeholders to implement the recommendations, so we don't start the same discussion again and again. And I think in terms of my hope, because I think the summit is just one part of the process, but I think the most important process is the implementation, as you said, Dina. And I think a way to do that is, we have to be aware of the policies that are being made at the moment. And I think the thing is with young people, I think over the years, we're now more well networked. I think we're more critical, and I think we're not shying away in demanding happen if we don't collaborate. And yes, we talk about G20. It's about these big words and big country. It's never too early to start something, and just start right where you are. And a matter of translating these big policy recommendations into your everyday actions. And I hope that with this session, you continue to be inspired, and I think you continue to engage with us. Like, talk to us after this event if you need some ideas, brainstorming on how we can help you implement these policy recommendations, and tell us like what you want to see more in Y20 in the near future. Like, we're preparing, the next year's event, which is in India. We're doing a lot of knowledge transfers. We're sharing a lot of best practices. Talk to delegates. I'm sure you can reach us in some ways through social media, through email, or even to IYD, where we're more than happy to make these connections with you. And don't stop talking, don't stop thinking, and start, we can always start somewhere, and start small is the most important, because don't just think, like, start something. I think that would be my end my ending sentence here. So yeah, I hope it has been helpful, and thanks again to everyone for making the.
Thank you so much, Disti, Anna, and also Shukri. It has been very fruitful conversation, fruitful discussion. It's all well, beautifully said. I really love it. I mean, I like the statement like Ubuntu, and I would like also to add there is like cogito ergo sum. So the more you think, it's stating that you are still there, you are still alive. I mean, we need to mainstream about this. So if I could wrap up the whole 1.5 hour discussion, which is it's very amazing discussion. First thing first, for all the young people that have been attending this session, or maybe like after this, you can also talk about it, sounding about it, mainstreaming it on your social media. This is also the meaning of knowledge transfer. Not everybody have the opportunity to attend this session, for example, but you could be like the first person to also share about the communique, about other issues that is happening in your daily basis. For example, like diversity and inclusion. Second of all, like I would like also to take the statement from Shukri, like collaboration is the key. We need to also collaborate with all actors, targeting the right person. If you want to tackle the issues of inclusive education, then you must listen to the right person as well, listen to the right target, and then also collaborate all together. And then the third one, I think the most important stuff also like meaningful participation, where not only collaborate but also listening to their voices, learning from their own experience. It's very important. And then like after all, we give the equal opportunity, give the seat for the young people, for example, if we want to ensure that they have the meaningful youth participation after all, to collaborate also with the global leaders. And the last important stuff also, like how to ensure that we can monitor, we can evaluate together among the young people itself, and also just talk about this to the global leaders. Sometimes they are missing this part because we have the other ideas, we can see from our own perspective that maybe they never think about it. So that's very amazing. So if you guys would like to know and learn more about Y20 Communiqué, I think you guys should also learn about it, and also just see from the Instagram and also other social media from RSF, Regional Sustainable Future, and Y20 on Instagram and YouTube. And then you need also to follow up about the draft. Maybe if you have some input and insights, you can also talk about it to the, I don't know, Y20 staff and everything. So it's going to be like more fruitful and enriching. And then after all, just mainstreaming about it. This is very important. Before I close this, there is like a request from the team that maybe we can take a pictures, the screenshot for this session before everybody's leaving this session. Renny, you want to lead this?
Right. Okay. I will just on 3. 1, 2, 3. I'll screenshot. Okay. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Beautiful. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure to know you all. It's been an honor for me to know and talk with Anna, with Shukri, with Disti, and also it's very amazing discussion. Don't forget to still follow the Instagram account from RSF and also Y20 on Instagram and YouTube. And have a great evening if you are in Jakarta, in Indonesia, or the other part of the world. Bye.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone. It was a
much. Take
fruitful
care.
discussion.